it's Michael Douglas. Welcome back to another episode of Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And it's another line items today where we'll talk about the ability to read music. Now, for the purposes of this particular episode, I'm not going to include Barry White because the day will come where I will talk about his musical career in volumes. And he's famously known as being, or rather not being able to read a note of music. But he obviously was a multi-talented pianist, vocalist, and you get the picture. But there are three rock musicians I want to talk about who fit that bill. And yes, they recorded music and they were extremely talented, but they really didn't know how to read music. Now, reading music might seem like a rather crucial part of being a musician, but it's not as important as one might assume. In fact, some of your favorite musicians likely don't know how to read music, which is like being fluent in a foreign language. You have to know and memorize the important symbols, where they're used, and so on. So it's not an impossible task by any means. But for musicians who didn't know how to play by reading music, it almost seems impractical. They already have their methods and practices down, so why implement a new one? At least that's what three musical icons think. So first, Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney is one of the most innovative, talented songwriters and performers in the history of the world. Okay, the man has a knack for craft and a special set of ears that any aspiring musician would basically kill for. But McCartney never really cared about learning music. And did it hold him back? Well, everybody on this planet knows the answer to that question. In an interview with 60 Minutes, Paul McCartney attested to this fact by stating, "I don't read music or write music. None of us did in the Beatles. I don't see music as dots on a page. It's something in my head that goes on." Cool. Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page has always had an uncanny ability to take what's in his head and articulate it, in my opinion. He's successfully done this for years without the full fluency of the musical languages. And while Page can understand basic chords and chord charts and so on, he is by no means fluent. Concerning his lack of fluency in the language of music, Page told the press in 1977, "I really don't read music. To be honest with you, I read it like a 6-year-old reads a book," which was adequate for sessions. I totally understand that. Finally, Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton seems like he would be a technical guitarist, given the deliberate nature and the highly stylistic and personalized way he approaches his instrument of choice. However, this is really not the case with Eric Clapton. Like many of his contemporaries, Eric Clapton never learned to read music. As he has said in the past, it hindered his creative flow. In his book, Clapton, the autobiography, he attests to not being able to read music by recalling the time he played in a recording session with Aretha Franklin. During that recording session, Clapton felt nervous because everyone was reading music except for him. Still, as the record shows, his inability did not slow him down in the slightest. Indeed, one could argue is that it's many of the elements that make Eric Clapton, Eric Clapton. So I think those who don't know how to read music, those musicians, learn to compensate in so many other ways that makes their creativity flourish. And it's kind of like a good example is Stevie Wonder, whose deficit is obviously his eyesight. It didn't hinder him, obviously, in the least. And if the performer has full control of his or her senses, what they do or what they learn to implement in their craft of choice is really up to them. And if they think that learning music theory hampers that in any way, as it is explained by these three rock musicians, then they trusted their ears, trusted their ability to write and perform and to create based on what they heard. I just think that's extremely impressive and just blows my mind because, I'm the only one in my family who doesn't even know how to play a musical instrument, sadly. So, an interesting line items here today. I'm Michael Douglas. If you like what you see here on the channel, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And as a late great Barry White always used to say, Barry White, who also could not read music, let the music play. And I'll see you again on the next episode.